So we have just arrived here in Southern California. We are in Santa Monica. We are walking on Santa Monica Beach. I apologize if the lighting isn't particularly great in this video. It's very, very cloudy and foggy today, as you can see, and can't control that. That said, if you've been following my channel for the past 3 to 4 years, then you know that I have a very complicated relationship with Southern California. What I mean by that is, throughout the past few years, I always seem to end up back here. And in particular, I always seem to end up back in Santa Monica. And I don't really know why that is. For whatever reason, I'm not from California, I'm from Texas, but I've always kind of felt this connection to California ever since I came here for the first time. Maybe that's a bit of a lie, but ever since I came here the second time, back in 2020, I felt a very strong connection where as soon as we cross the state line, I feel like I am at home. That said, I've been here many, many times before. As a matter of fact, I spent almost 3 months here living in my car back in 2023. However, this is Nadia's first time here in California, and particularly Southern California. But like I said, we just arrived here, so I'm gonna give her some more time to soak the scenery in and develop her first impressions, and we'll get to that toward the end of the video. But before we get into those, I want to talk about why I can never look at this area the same way again. So like I said, ever since I came out here the second time, I felt a very strong connection. The first time I came here, however, I didn't really like it. I did not really like LA that much, if I'm being completely honest. So the backstory behind that is, basically I was 18 years old, I was in college, I was dead broke, maybe $400 or $500 to my name. My friend calls me up, "Jordan, you want to go to LA?" I was like, "No, not really, I'm broke." But he used his psychological tactics to convince me to go on this trip with him, and we were both broke, so we took the bus from Dallas to LA and we stayed in a hostel, and then we took the public transit everywhere, and it was definitely an experience. I don't know if I could call it a good experience, but it wasn't particularly bad. It was very eye-opening. But the one thing that I vividly remember from that trip was arriving in LA and feeling very underwhelmed. I remember feeling very underwhelmed about LA because earlier that year I had visited New York for the first time, and because I didn't know much about LA, I assumed that whenever we would get here, it would feel like a very dense metropolis like New York City. And we got here and it looked kind of like Dallas, but with palm trees. I was like, okay, we really just rode this bus for 30 hours for this, for an upgraded Dallas. I don't know if that was worth it. Fast forward to 2020, I decided to come back because somebody reached out to me and said that I should come back out here and he could show me a different part of LA. And so I did, and that vlog is still on my channel if you want to check that out. But he showed me a different part of LA, particularly the Long Beach area. I was like, okay, I might have been asleep on LA. And ever since then, pretty much every year I've been back at least once. Some years I went as many as 3 times. And suffice to say, I fell in love with LA. Somewhere throughout that process, there was never just that eureka moment where I realized, wow, I really love this place, I want to move here. It was just this gradual progression where I almost felt magnetized to this place. And instead of going and seeing other places around the US, I just kept coming back here. And I loved it here. In fact, I loved it so much that in 2022, I made some pretty poor financial decisions and ended up living in my car, which, by the way, was sort of the premise for this whole van life thing that we're doing right now. But anyways, I had to move into my car. Well, I guess I didn't have to move into my car. I chose to move into my car because I wanted to move to LA that badly. So you have to think about it. At that time, I had to leave my apartment. That was non-negotiable. Didn't have the money to continue paying the rent. But I could have either A, moved back in with my parents in Lewisville, Texas, or B, moved into my car and came out here to LA. And that is precisely what I did. And let me tell you, my subscribers at that time let me have it. They were calling me crazy and all types of stuff, but I did not care. I just wanted to be in LA so badly that I said, I'm going to California. I don't care what anybody says. And I came out here and I loved it. I was having the time of my life because I was finally in the place that I wanted to be in. Didn't care if I was living in the back of a Mazda, didn't care what the conditions were. I just knew I was in LA, and that's all that mattered to me. So around the same time that I moved to LA, Nadia here decided to do an internship in Valencia, Spain. And it was pretty interesting because this was toward the very beginning of our relationship, and we were both taking these leaps of faith that were pretty unconventional compared to the people around us. But we both moved to these different places, and I had already been to LA. She hadn't been to Valencia yet, so I think the move was a little harder for her. And so what I decided to do, mind you, I was still broke at the time. I had, at this point, probably $3,000 to my name, if that. I decided to take about half my money, so about $1,500, and take a 2-week trip to Valencia, Spain from LA. Now mind you, I didn't know anything about Valencia at all. Didn't even know Valencia existed until Nadia said that she was going to be going there for her internship. So I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, that's kind of a lie. I didn't know what to expect. I expected it to be worse than LA, because in my mind, everywhere was worse than LA. And truthfully, at that time, I thought everywhere was worse than America, which, as we now know, is not true at all. But I landed in Valencia. It was nighttime, and I felt pretty much the complete opposite of what I felt when I arrived in LA for the first time. Any expectations that I had were instantly surpassed. And then next morning I woke up, I walked outside, and I was like, oh my God, this place is paradise. This place is literally paradise. But Valencia, while it's nice on its own, what made Valencia so interesting to me was the fact that in many ways, it felt kind of like a utopian version of Los Angeles. And what do I mean by that? How can it be a utopian version of LA if, to me, at that time, LA was utopia? Well, basically, it had pretty much all of the benefits of LA with none of the drawbacks. So you still had the palm trees like this. You had the beaches, which were, in my opinion, on par with any beach I've seen out here. And the weather was absolutely amazing. Here in LA, the weather is typically much, much better than it is right now. But I digress. I got to Valencia and it literally felt like an alternate reality version of LA. And I spent 2 weeks in Valencia with Nadia. Granted, she was doing her internship, so I spent a lot of time kind of exploring on my own, and I fell in love. But I didn't realize I'd fallen in love with Valencia and Europe as a whole until I arrived back in LA. I remember as I was on the plane and we were descending into LAX, the first thing I noticed was that, wow, everything is a lot more spread out here. And of course, I didn't know much about urban planning and all of that at the time, and I still don't, but I quickly connected the dots in my mind that, hey, that's probably the reason why LA isn't bikeable in the same way that Valencia is. Because I remember that was one of my favorite things about Valencia, was that it was bikeable. But aside from that, when I got on the bus, the shuttle bus, to take me back to the parking lot where I had left my car, the car that I was living in at that time, I noticed pretty much all of the flaws that people constantly point out when talking about LA. So the homelessness, that was the first thing that instantly stuck out to me. We made it all of maybe 5 or 10 minutes from the airport when I started seeing the tents, the infamous tents. And coming from Valencia, that blew my fucking mind, because I think while we were in Valencia, we saw a total of what, 5, maybe 10 homeless people, if that? Yeah. If that. So my mind was absolutely blown. And then I got back to my car and I was driving around, and as Nadia probably noticed today, we'll get her opinion here in a second, I realized LA is kind of raggedy. I mean, a lot of LA is dated, it's old, it looks run down, gritty. It doesn't really look how you would expect based on how the movies and TV shows portray it. And that was sort of the beginning of my journey to knowing without a shadow of a doubt that the US is not all that it's cracked up to be. That said, this is the last main destination that we will be exploring during this trip. What I want to know, Nadia, is what do you think of LA? What are your first impressions of LA? We basically explored a little bit of the valley, so maybe Van Nuys, and then everything else between there and Santa Monica was just freeway. But you did see some of that LA traffic. Yeah. You probably got a good feel for the infrastructure. What do you think of LA? First impressions?
Honestly, I'm not too impressed yet.
You're not too impressed?
No. I mean, it would probably help if like the sky was blue. I feel like that makes a huge difference as well.
Yeah.
In just the whole atmosphere and vibe.
Yeah.
But so far, well, I haven't seen a whole lot yet, but I do like the palm trees. They give this tropical feeling.
Yeah.
But as far as the beach goes, well, we can't really see that far, not right now, because it's so cloudy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like, yeah. It's not the best beach I've ever seen, I think.
Okay, well, if you don't like Santa Monica Beach, then I'm not gonna lie, you're probably not gonna like LA very much. Because the reason why I took you here first was because this, to me, is what I personally believe should be the template for how LA should go about building the rest of the city. I mean, most of the city is already built, but with the bikeability and general liveliness, cultivating that atmosphere where there are a lot of pedestrians. And even in the area that we walked from, where there were all the shops and all of that, yeah, I won't say it felt European, but it had more in common with Europe than a place like Dallas, for example, where there is no walkability at all. Yeah. So to me, this is about as close as it's going to get to a Valencia or something like that. Yeah. So if you don't like it here, I'm not gonna lie, the rest of LA is probably gonna be very underwhelming.
Yeah. Talk down it or something, but that's my honest view right now. But it does make a huge difference. I feel like the weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do like the shop area and stuff. Yeah. Here. But I'm not too impressed.
Yeah. Again, if you don't like Santa Monica, then you're not gonna like much of LA, because most of the rest of LA is either very, very rich and upscale to the extent that it feels sterile and inaccessible, or like what you saw earlier, raggedy, outdated, a little bit ghetto. You have graffiti everywhere. You have a lot of graffiti in Europe as well, but I feel like the graffiti here, they take it to a different level where they're tagging up the signs and stuff like that, making it harder to read the signs. Obviously, you saw the traffic is pretty bad out here, and it's on a Saturday, so it's not like we were encountering rush hour traffic or anything.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, that's the thing. With LA, they don't have traffic jams. There's just traffic. Just constantly traffic all the time. And it gets really, really overwhelming, especially because the public transit out here isn't particularly great for a city of its size. But where would you say LA ranks compared to the other places we've been? Because just for context, I know the vlogs have been kind of sporadic in terms of where we've been, so you may not have a good sense or a good feel for how much ground we've covered in the time frame that we've covered it in. But basically, in the past 2 weeks, we have been in Times Square, we've been in downtown Chicago, and we've been here in Santa Monica within the past 2 weeks. Again, truck driver CDL hours. Where would you say LA ranks amongst the places we've been?
Well, I feel like I can't really rank it yet because I've seen like 2%.
Yeah. Well, We also saw 2% of Chicago, to be fair. We didn't really see a whole lot of that. We didn't see much of New York either. So these are all snap judgments that
Well, I mean, it does have a beach, and I really like beaches.
Yeah.
So that gives it more points.
Okay.
So put it above Chicago.
You put it above Chicago?
Yeah.
Chicago does have a beach though, to be fair.
But we haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. Well, I guess Chicago has public transport.
Yeah.
Better public transport.
Yeah.
But we haven't really experienced that either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I think I put it above Chicago because of the beach.
Okay. How would it compare to Las Vegas? Because we woke up in Vegas today. We spent the night last night, and spoiler alert, Nadia wasn't particularly impressed with Vegas, nor was I. But how does it compare to Vegas?
Yeah, definitely I choose this over Vegas.
Okay, so it's not at the bottom.
No, it's not at the bottom.
So is it in your top 5 then? Because you put it above Chicago.
What was my top 5?
Your top 3 were Boston, DC,
Yeah.
and New Orleans. What would 4 and 5 be?
I guess 4 would be New York,
Okay.
and then this will be 5.
So you have New York above LA.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess.
Well, as we explore more of LA, she'll have a chance to form a more complete opinion, because again, I am asking her to make a snap judgment. We literally just got here. I'm talking about we just got to LA an hour ago at most. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel that same magic I used to feel coming out here.
Well, don't let me like impact how you feel about it.
No, but honestly, I was expecting to feel that I'm home feeling that I used to get every time I would come here. And I just haven't felt it yet. I think maybe the weather has something to do with it. I don't know. I will say that I have a lot of nostalgia out here because I've been here so many times, and the time that I spent here was so crucial and critical to my maturation just as a man, just learning more about myself, especially living in a car. But I would not choose to live here if there were other options, especially options in Europe. So you said that this isn't the best beach you've seen. What is the best beach that you've personally seen?
Yeah, I really liked Mallorca's beaches.
Mallorca, okay.
And Valencia. I think those are my... Well, actually, now I have to go way back into my memory because I'm thinking of the beach in France. The place was called Biarritz.
Biarritz.
I think that beach, from what I remember, it's so long ago, but I think I really liked that beach as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe Monday, when the weather will be nicer, it will just be a whole different vibe.
Yeah.
Maybe then I'd say LA over New York, but I don't know.
Well, we'll see, but the beach that I'm taking her to right now, I don't think she's gonna like it very much, but that's exactly why I'm taking you there. If you're European and you've been to a lot of beaches in Europe, I'd love to know what your personal favorite beaches are.